Can you guys hear me okay? Oh my god. I'm trying to get this going. Someone confirm that you can hear me. Okay, good. Welcome everyone. It's been one of those days. Let me just put it that way. Ugh. I was typing away saying, why isn't this working? I'm cursing you guys. I'm just kidding. Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Okay, so you can hear me. Can you see my screen? That's another thing. I've been trying to do this live stream all day, and it keeps bugging out on me, so I kept canceling it. I think we had a live stream earlier with nothing showing in it. There was like 5 people waiting, so I apologize if you were one of the 5 waiting for this unscheduled, unannounced, random live stream with some new tech that I've been trying to figure out. So, hey, apparently, you know what? If you can see the screen and you can see the charts and hear my voice, what else matters? I'm going to be snacking here a little bit. I'll try not to crunch too loud on the mic. But let's get to it. So, thanks for everyone for being here. So, I love that you are all here. So, don't take this the wrong way because I want you all to stay. But I was trying to schedule a live stream for the Node Insiders group, the Slack group. I was trying to do it all day. I keep doing it. Every time I do it, it launches as a public live stream, even though when I schedule it, it says it's a, what do you call it? An unpublished live stream, right? Where I'll share the link with the folks on the Slack group for when we do the private live streams. But every time I would do that, it would still schedule it as a public one. So, hey, it's all good. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm going to pretty much cover the same thing anyway. We're just going to have a little bit of a bigger audience. I'll try to get to all the questions. That's really the only reason I do the private streams, is so we can answer the questions and be a little bit more, one-on-one. But hey, it's all good, right? So congratulations to everybody that made a lot on the way up, and congratulations to everybody that got wrecked on the quick spike down. Oh, man. Good stuff. So I did buy the dip, in case you were wondering. I was looking at 10.2 when we started to kind of drop. It's just an oversold bounce for me. I was actually flat going into this. And so for those of you that are in the Slack group, for those of you that are part of the private channel, it was very clear. We were looking like we were about to break lower. It just needed a little bit of a push. I posted, it was probably a few minutes even before this started to roll over, maybe 15, 20 minutes. We had dropped earlier in the morning. We saw this big drop, and of course that's a big bearish reversal. The volume that was there, especially after the breakout. So it was a little bit of a bull trap, right? You had this very nice move on the way up, a lot of stair stepping, plenty of places to kind of add or get long. And then we had the big breakout into 12K, paused, and then very quick breakdown. Generally, that's a bearish sign when you see that kind of a reversal on much volume. The daily chart was extended. The 4-hour chart was extended. Needed to pause a little bit. And then we just kind of sat tight for most of the day. I didn't like the action. It looked like it was just a little bit of a bidder holding price up. Very easy to push price down when you see that sort of thing. And so I posted in the Slack group that I cleared pretty much all my positions. I didn't have a whole lot of trades anyway. We were looking at Matic yesterday. That turned out to be a very nice trade. I looked at a few others. I'll post the charts on those here shortly. And then I was in some Bitcoin here, but just basically cleared the deck before this break. Posted that in the private channel for those of you that saw that. And sure enough, we broke the line, very quickly came down, got a little extended. I started seeing this 11.2 on the chart. So I said, I'm going to start scaling in here. And so I made all of my buys. Luckily, I got pretty lucky on that. I made all of my buys sub 11.3. And here we are seeing a little bit of a bounce. Now, this is just a bounce for now. I'm not expecting this to be, the full retrace and back to the races. And here we are. It could, but you'll at least see a little bit of a higher low first. And so I'm just going to look for this as a bounce. I'm just going to start scaling out on the way up into these moving averages. And really, this is the first resistance, right? You got the 10 EMA on the 30-minute chart. This is very short time frames because things are moving fast. Then the 22, and then this line right here that was kind of the support that gave way. And so that's what I was doing. The fact that I scaled in so low, I'm just kind of looking at the low of the wick as your near-term support. You can give it a little wiggle room. The thing with these oversold bounces is you take your first position once it starts to bounce a little bit off that low. I was watching the price real time. I thought this was it here, but there was no confirmation. And then you saw that quick spike into 11.2. And when it started to really react right off of that, I thought, that's going to be the first place to look at it. But when you take your first shot, you don't know if that's the low. So you got to give it a wider stop and scale in a little bit lower. But the fact that it bounced right away, I added on the way up. And at that point, once I'm adding on the way up, then my stop gets very tight. So I'll basically put a stop at the low of the wick. And if I get stopped out, no big deal. It's a very tight stop. And then I'll give it another go if it looks like it's reversing. Obviously, that didn't happen. It's bouncing here pretty good. And so once you get a little bit of green on the board, you take some profits, tighten the stops, and then you let the rest ride. At that point, it's pretty much a guaranteed winning trade. And that's basically an oversold bounce trade. I'm not looking at this as a swing trade. If we go to the 4-hour view, the fact that it held at the 22 EMA is very positive. That's kind of your last support. You also got some major support back here. If you look left, this was kind of a big breakout point that we had from a few days ago. This was prior support, had previously been resistance around that 11K. I don't know why my chart's jittering there. So you got some support, but basically you've got this big green candle and not a lot of room between. So it kind of was in no man's land here. It was just an oversold bounce, the fact that we were bouncing into some of this level. And that's what I was looking at here on the shorter time frames on this 4-hour chart. But 11K, that round number, is that big number to be looking at as your first major support on the way down. If you do some fib retracements off of this big move we had here from the lows, you go from almost end to end. You can even use the candle bodies if you wanted to be a little bit more conservative, but you can see this wick, almost to the dollar, hit the 382 retracement level. And so that's a good thing. Generally, that's the first level of support on the way up. You'll see that bounce from that level. If it cuts through, 50% is just below that 11K. It's at 10.8. So that'd be the next kind of major fib retracement level. So a couple levels to be watching there on the way down. I don't think it's over. I think you might get a little bit more downside, but it's just going to all depend on how quickly this recovers. I think it just needs a little bit more time to consolidate, even if it's just some sideways choppy action. If we go to the daily chart, I'm in Coinbase right now, or Binance, excuse me. I'll look at the Coinbase here in a little bit. Very bullish action, but this is a big, reversal candle here into the close. Here we are basically minutes away from the close, and this is going to end in the red, absolutely. The volume is the highest that it's been in this entire move up. Now, this entire move, volume was a little light compared to some of the prior action here, and so, we had the big climactic push yesterday, which was nice. And here we are seeing the reversal, some profit taking. But, we want to see a little bit of a higher low. This was a big double bottom that we saw form here. There we go. Double bottom right there. The breakout point was really right here, that 11K mark, just below it. And so even a pullback into that zone would be a nice throwback entry from the higher time frames from the daily chart point of view here. Let me go to the Coinbase chart on this. A lot of red across the board here. I'm going to activate one of these indicators here that I've been showing lately. Didn't see any sort of a profit-taking signal just yet. That buy signal was still long. So, we had that long signal back down in here, and it's still kind of keeping you in the trade at this point. It's all discretionary once you're long, but this is a pretty good little indicator just because it gets you long here. You can see where it got you out here, gets you back along there, got you out here, here, and so forth. Haven't seen a sell signal yet, so it's going to be interesting to see if this is just a little bit of a pullback on the daily. So here goes. The daily candle just rolled over. We're starting a new daily candle now. And generally, this is kind of the hour in and around this time frame leading into the daily close, and just at the start of it, you tend to see a lot of volatility. A lot of people ask about that. Why all the volatility? What's the significance of the daily candle? And in reality, when it comes to crypto, because it's a 24/7 market, there really is no big significance, but it is in the sense that it is a daily candle close. A lot of indicators, a lot of algos, a lot of stuff are working around certain time frames, and the daily candle close is a confluence of multiple time frames closing at the same time. You got an hourly close, obviously, you got a 4-hour close, you've got a 12-hour close, and then you have a daily close. And so if you've got bots, if you've got indicators, if you've got trading systems that kind of revolve around the daily candle close or the hourly candle close, whichever time frame you're using, you just have a big confluence of candle closes right around that daily candle close. And then you also have kind of, the Asian market starting up. You still have the U.S. side still kind of active and awake. So there's a lot of market participants. So it's just kind of a unique scenario where you just get a lot of volume, a lot of rebalancing and new positions being taken and all that good stuff. So that's that's just my thoughts on that. So let's see here. Let me go through some of these comments since we've got it going, and then I'll take a look at some of the other charts here, some of the trades that we were looking at here. Let me see here. Let me see. You're not a trader, but you will just sit and learn. Thank you, Bitcoin Ben. Welcome. Hopefully you do learn a little bit here. I always try to teach a little bit while I do some of this here. And this is obviously all charts and technical analysis. And so if charts and candlesticks are not your thing, it may not be as fun. All right, let's see here. Do I use harmonics? I don't. Bounce off that 1 hour. It was interesting too because we had a long-term trend here. Not long-term, but on the hourly, I was drawing this trend line. You did see a little bit of a bounce off of that, which was another reason I thought we could see some reaction from that. So, we saw the candle bouncing off of this trend. We'll see if that holds. Yeah, so the Litecoin halving, no big run-up on that. I didn't expect there to be a run-up after the halving event, but there was a chance that maybe there was a little bit of a run-up into that. The big run-up really happened, back here, right? This was the Litecoin halving run-up. Kind of as we entered 2019, the price was just so low. There was a confluence of things happening there, and it continued. Litecoin was one of the stronger names. It wasn't the strongest, but certainly one of the stronger names out there. And then we saw the profit taking. Of course, Bitcoin topped into that, which didn't help the Litecoin cause, but it was also underperforming Bitcoin anyway here in the recent weeks. And I was thinking maybe we'd see a little bit of a bounce or something into the event, and you can see what happened. I mean, it was basically a sell the event news, right? You had this very small consolidation here after being very oversold. I mean, just straight down, started to kind of wedge up, and then you had the blip. It was literally a one-day event. Oh, the halving, boom, done, and here it goes, just underperforming Bitcoin, rolling over. So nothing materialized from that. And so you can't expect for after the halving for a price to react to that. That's just not generally the way it works. There's usually front running into these events and then some sort of reaction afterwards. And so that's what my thoughts are. So now that the halving is gone for Litecoin, it's past us. It's just kind of back to business as usual, supply, demand, technicals, right? It's not really event driven. What is event driven now is the Bitcoin halving, which I think some of this is being priced in already, right? People have been talking about the Bitcoin halving all year, it seems. Once we entered 2019, everybody started talking about, oh, next year there's a halving, Litecoin halving is coming up this year. And so I think some of that is pricing in the halving already. I expect it's going to be much the same with Bitcoin, right? If it does continue higher, it'll continue into that halving event, but got to remember the halving event is, back here. Let me highlight it for us. For Bitcoin, right, it's around this May time frame. And so would not surprise me to see some similar action. How high does it go is anyone's guess. I mean, but if it continues higher, right, I wouldn't be surprised to see, the pullback begin months before that, right? And then maybe some reaction after that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Bitcoin is a little bit different in the sense that it's still kind of the king crypto, the dominant one by far. No other crypto comes close to the dominance of BTC. So, you can't say exactly how Litecoin played out. That's how the Bitcoin halving is going to play out, because it is a little bit of a different animal from that perspective. Am I excited about Fed now? Not really. Not really. At this point, it's not surprising. You're seeing a lot of banks do this. It's a faster way to clear and settle and all that. It makes sense to use the technology for that. What I don't want to see, obviously, is that start to morph into, oh, we've got this national crypto now that you should use, becomes you will use, becomes if you don't use, you're in trouble, right? And it's just one of those things. And so that's really what makes me uneasy about governments and Fed and all that stuff getting involved in the space. But it's inevitable, my friends. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but it's inevitable. They're going to do it, whether it's Fed coin, IMF coin, Euro coin, whatever coin, Libra. It's coming. It is coming. All right, let's take a look at some of these other ones here. So I'm going to just go through the charts. We saw Bitcoin. I'll come back to it. I know some of you guys are still joining. There was a couple of trades over the last few days that I was posting here, so I'm going to kind of cover this for the private group, some ideas that I was looking at here. Let me go through some of these. So I was mostly looking at them from the USD side. Ontology was setting up here. I was looking for a potential breakout. Let's go to that 4-hour chart. It was looking really nice. And yesterday, keep in mind, we had Coinbase announce a handful of names they were looking at considering adding, right? Ontology, Matic, what were the others? Waves, Dash, Decred, Harmony. There was a handful of other names. And so those had a nice little reaction to them, some more than others. Algo was another one. And so I was already looking at ONT. It was on my radar, but I was looking at it from the USD side. Obviously, the BTC side, it looks horrible. And it had a little bit of a breakout, was looking pretty good, and then just failed rollover. And so that's obviously never materialized into anything there. Matic was by far the strongest one. That worked out very nicely. I did get out of that position. I'm wondering if I got a little bit too early here, but let's zoom in here. So Matic had that reaction here on the news yesterday with Coinbase saying, hey, we're looking at this one. That had a very strong reaction. It was pulling back, bouncing. At the time I posted this in the private channel as a potential name to watch, I think we were right here, and I was saying there's a couple ways to play this. The first way was, look for a break of this downtrend, a little bit of a bull flag type of setup on this one, and Harmony had the same kind of setup. And then the alternative was at the 1 hour or the 4-hour chart, look for a pullback into the moving averages. It never really gave you that deep of a pullback. It kind of just settled. And what ended up turning out is it just basically formed a very nice ascending triangle pattern here. Let me see if I can clear this. And you can see here just the rising lows and the flat top, and that really set up for a very nice breakout trade. Even if you didn't get in back here, right, you could have just been watching this here. Volume started to spike as it set up, and you would have wicked in if you had a conditional buy order, which was the case for me, but it never stopped out, right? There was these wicks that went above the line and then quickly retreated, but the logical stop was right here, and you can see that the price never fell below that point. In fact, it held the 22 EMA, almost perfectly. Let me clear this blue line here. Not that blue line. Here we go. So you can see this yellow line rising here. That was the 22 EMA. It just came right back to that here. This is the 30-minute chart, by the way, so very short time frame. When things are moving that quickly, you kind of got to zoom in a little bit more. And then it had that breakout, pullback, and just very strong day here today. Started to pull back, decided to just get out of the way here. But even with the Bitcoin sell-off, this one has been holding up very nicely. I'm surprised. I was all but expecting this level down here to break, which is why I got out of the way, because Bitcoin looked like it was about to break, and I thought Matic's going to go with it from the USD side. But very surprising at how strong this name is right now. So holding up very good. If you go to the 4-hour chart, get a little bit of a higher time frame. It is extended by all scenarios. If you look at this, let me pull up my RSI and MACD here real quick. You can see the RSI hit 80, pulling back right here. MACD's kind of rolling back. The 10 EMA is still a ways out. So, best case, in my opinion, would be just a little bit of chop around here, some consolidation, maybe set up another base. And if it pulls back, your first level of support is going to be that prior breakout points right around there, which is right where the 10 EMA is. So that's looking pretty good. It needs to hold up. I'm out of the trade for now. It was just a quick trade. It was surprisingly strong. I didn't think it'd be that big of a trade, honestly. I thought it was just going to be a little bit of a secondary pump, but that was a good trade there. The other ones that didn't work, let's look at Harmony. Again, looking at it from the dollar side, a little bit more thin of a name in terms of volume, doesn't trade as cleanly as Matic, but you can see this one pulled back and started doing something similar. Again, I was looking at it the same way yesterday when I posted this on the Slack channel. It was right here, and so this was a failed breakout attempt. Looking at a bull flag scenario, it came to the 10 EMA, broke out, and then quick reversal, and then that one did wick me out here just because these wicks bottomed out there, and so was out of the trade when it finally started to take off. But you know, it had a good trade, but didn't really materialize quite as strongly as Matic, and so not a whole lot there. What were some of the other names? Oh, Algo. Algo had already been pretty strong, and I'm going to go to Tether on this one here. And it looked like a nice breakout, but it was extended. If you go to the 4-hour chart, you know, had already had a strong move over the weekend and was in pullback mode, and then just started to find a low, and then that was when the Coinbase news came out and gave it a little bit of extra run, and then it just faded. It just I thought maybe it would pull back, form a bull flag or something, and get going again. It just never did. Just started fade, and it looks like it's about to lose this support level down here. It's still in play, potentially making a higher low, but at this point it is looking not as bullish here anymore, just because this pullback was so deep on that time frame. You want to see this this bounce play out. Let's see if that hit a target. I bet you that hit one of the fib levels. That's a good way to play the bounce trades, is using some of these fib levels. Look at that. I mean, almost exactly hit the 618 retracement on the way up. And so those fib levels are really nice for bounce trades, especially when you get like a falling wedge or something like that. You know, those are nice little kind of retracement levels to take some targets into, and that's exactly where it hit. So that one worked out nicely there. Let's see, I think that was the only ones that I posted. Most everything else has been really tough from an altcoin perspective. It's basically been the Bitcoin show. You know, obviously Litecoin halving came and went. I'm trying to think of some other names that I posted. I was looking at Neo. Most of the names I was looking at were from the USD side. So Neo and EOS were the other two. Here, I'll take a look at those. Neo, again, was setting up nicely here. You can see this was starting to tighten up. The 1-hour chart, the lows were starting to rise. It was decision time, and then it was a failed breakout. Broke out, volume was there by all means. You know, it was checking the boxes, cleared resistance, held, volume kicked in, and then just nothing. Didn't materialize. And that's why you use stops in trading. Remember, trading is a probabilities game. You look at setups with potential edge. You look at, you know, scenarios where where's the nearest support, where's the nearest resistance, how high up could it go if it breaks out, you know, where's my stop if it doesn't, and then you take, you know, the trades that work with your system or whatever your strategy is, but you always got to have a stop, because there's no strategy, no system, no setup that's going to be 100% every time. And this is the beauty of stops, right? I mean, even if you had a really tight stop here or here, it saves you the pain of wondering, oh man, should I get out now? Should I get out now? Because, you know, you have some discipline where you say, if it hits this, like, obviously my thesis was incorrect, the market's not ready yet. And, you know, and very often I see that and it's like, wow, I'm glad I hit my stop there, even though at the time you're kind of frustrated, oh, I got stopped out. But when you look back later and you're going, oh, I'm glad I got stopped out, right? And that's, you know, there's an old saying, the first stop is always the best stop. You know, Ripple was a good example of that, right? Looking at Ripple here, I mean, it was looking like a breakout trade. It was setting up. It actually started to clear some resistance there, and then it failed. And I remember distinctly posting this chart saying there's a big reversal, breaking the lower trend line. And you never know, right, if it's going to be a fake out and it just stops there and reverses and starts going higher. But look at what happened. I mean, that was a good place to cut it. It was clearly a failed breakout, hit resistance, popped above, bull trap, and then just started to grind lower. And look at how, you know, how much further it went even after that point. You know, dropped as much as another 17% relative to Bitcoin. So you always got to use stops. If you're new to trading, if you're new to all of this fun stuff, all of this madness, then you definitely must use stops, because you just never know. You just never know. All right, I'm going to take a swig of some of this stuff here, this non-alcoholic juice. All right. What if a country starts buying up Bitcoin? I would not be surprised if they already were, personally. I think some of them are. They probably just don't publicly say it. We're going to come out and say, oh, they're going to say it once everyone else starts doing it. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, we were buying it up. We've been buying up Bitcoin since 2015. Do I think this bull run can outperform the 2011 bull run? The 2011 bull run, there wasn't even, was that a typo? Did you mean to say 2011 or 2017? What else here? Is it Ripple dead XRP? You know, Ripple just has a lot of headwinds. You have a massive amount of supply, an insane amount of supply, and it's controlled, you know, largely by Ripple Labs and the founders. And, you know, we have since learned that, you know, Q1 and Q2, they've been dumping en masse. And well, not dumping, but, you know, there's quote unquote scheduled sales. But you can see it clearly reflected on the price. Just has been, you know, a lot of supply coming in. And the fact that there's some fundamental catalysts challenging what Ripple was trying to do with, you know, with other institutions coming up with similar things. Even Libra is still, you know, a payment thing that could challenge it. And there's just so much, right, that kind of makes you wonder some of these other payment tokens, Ripple and Dash and some of these other ones that are not necessarily platform hybrid tokens, right? Some of them are payment / platform where you can do smart contracts on there too, but it certainly will challenge them. And, you know, as we know, right, all of them won't win. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of good tech that just doesn't materialize for one reason or another. It's just like the startup world, right? Even teams with great ideas and great things and great leaders doesn't always win because, you know, for a number of reasons, market product fit and other competitors and whatever. So are people who compared 2011 16 charts to 19, or is it a completely different market? You know, Bitcoin is still dominance. So I think looking at Bitcoin in the past and comparing the cycles is very similar. I don't think it's a completely different market. Is it different? Absolutely. Is it much more mature? Certainly is. Market cap obviously is way higher than it was back then, but some of the psychology, some of the cycles are still similar. There's some things that rhyme, and I think, you know, there's some merit to using the past as a little bit of a guide. Will it play out exactly? No. There's going to be new things that drive the price. There's a lot more institutional adoption. We still haven't had the ETF, which no one's talking about anymore, but that's still out there, you know, backed and other things. So there's different drivers, different fundamental catalysts now. There's a lot more people aware of it, obviously, than in 2011, right? Back then, it was a very small, very niche group of people that were investing in it. Now it's kind of, you know, commonplace. 2017 changed that. It made Bitcoin a household word, right? Where people familiar with it now. It's not like, you know, people are saying, oh, we want it to go mainstream and adopt. It's there. Like 2017 did that. You know, it's on CNBC, and I see the ticker Bitcoin quotes on Fox Business and Bloomberg. So it's absolutely reached that mainstream point. Did it reach the point of mainstream payment adoption and all that? No. But from an asset perspective, it's absolutely there. All right, so let's look at some of these other names here. I'm going to go to the alert system because there's really not a whole lot from an altcoin perspective. And let's take a look at some of the names that you guys want to look at here. Okay. Broken. Let's see here. Oh, well, that's new. Okay, we'll come back to that. Looks like the BMI thing was not working here, so I need to check with them. On the move, Monero 6 hours ago. A lot of these on the moves are going to be because of the USD pairs and not so much the BTC pairs. You can see they're all USD, SIB. Nobody wants to look at that. I mean, it's just all USD, and that's mostly because of the price action we saw in Bitcoin over the last couple of days here. Let's look at some of these other names here. I'll take a look at Monero here real quick. XMR. Yeah, real similar price action over the last few days to Bitcoin. Didn't even quite have the lower low that the low that it did, right? It had that lower low, much more shallow pullback, and then got going here. What kind of percentage move was that? It's about the same. It's about a 25% move, so pretty similar action there. It's in pullback mode here, just with along with BTC here. How's it look from the Bitcoin pair? It's a little flatter than most names, but still not bullish. In fact, this looks like a little bit of a descending pattern, if you ask me, with some of the lower lows here. And you got a very clear support level that if it gives way, it's probably not going to be pretty. And so from a BTC pair perspective, that daily chart's not looking too bullish. It needs to break out. Let's see here. Binance coin. Still rolling down. Link has been one of the better holdouts as of late. It kept par with Bitcoin. It had that nice break of the trend here over the weekend, going into the weekend, and it just has been choppy since. But that made for a nice quick trade from the dollar side here. But now I'm keeping an eye on it for this consolidation. Let's go to the 4-hour chart. That was pretty good. I mean, it had that big, and it was a quick move. You got to remember how fast that move was, right? That was a 28% move in a handful, basically half a day, 12 hours or whatever it was. Pulling back, making a lower high, now it's making a lower low. This could be kind of a little bit of a shakeout low, so definitely worth keeping an eye on right here. The fact that it undercut that prior low. If it starts to close above, this little level here, call it 255 or so, that could signal the resumption of uptrend, especially on the daily chart, because the daily chart is sitting really flat, really tight. It's letting these moving averages catch up, and it broke that downtrend. So definitely one to keep an eye on here. How's it look from the BTC side? Because on the BTC side, it had a little shakeout, broke below support, and then quickly bounced right back. Not quite back above it here. So this is what I was looking at here. And I was watching this here for the last few weeks. Finally rolled over, came right back, looked like it was going to get going again, and then just rolled back over. So it's still below that line. So from the BTC pair, not looking so good still. Just kind of losing ground here a little bit versus Bitcoin. Ethereum Classic. Eesh. That's a name from yesteryear. They had a little pump here recently, but long term, I mean, I know you guys, there's fans out there and all that. I don't know. I'm just not a long-term believer in Ethereum Classic. I know why it exists. I understand the reasons behind it. Kudos. I get all that, but from a the valuation perspective, I just don't see it long term. You guys gonna have to convince me. Look at this. Eesh, brutal chart. Let's go look at ETH. Speaking of which, ETH BTC is brutal too. So it's not like ETH is all that wonderful compared to Bitcoin. Here's the daily chart, long-term daily chart. You can see just the alt carnage continues. And this really was a big break. I remember we were looking at this here a few weeks back saying, it's right at support. This probably would be a good place to bounce if it starts to lose. And man, once it dropped that support, I mean, this has been a pretty quick drop here. It lost that support in early July, and very quickly versus Bitcoin lost another 20-some%. So the downtrend continues in the alt world. Yeesh. Neo, you're about to sell out all your Neo. I think we looked at Neo here. Neo BTC is brutal too. All-time lows on Binance. Neo dollar, what was it again? 11, 12? 12.20. Binance is closing soon. I think that's a good point, because when you think about Binance closing the doors to the US investors and traders here shortly, there's some, there's a lot of tokens that US traders were primarily using Binance for, right? And Neo is a good example of that. I mean, yeah, I know Neo trades on other exchanges, but a lot of U.S. traders were only using Binance for Neo. Yeah, you can go through KuCoin, you can go through other ones, but it's not as widespread as some of these other names, right? Obviously, things like ETH and Litecoin and other those, even EOS, where it's like it's on a lot more exchanges, you get more options. But some of the names that are, you know, very Binance heavy in terms of trading volume, it makes me wonder if you're still starting to see that dumping into that, right? Ontology and Quantum and Neo, and there's a whole bunch of them. And some of the names on Binance already trade very, very weak volume compared to some of the other names, right? You look at some of the, when you look at Binance, they have a volume filter. You can see how much volume it's done in terms of Bitcoin over the last 24 hours. And man, there's a bunch of names that are like sub 100 BTC, and some of them are single digit BTC. And it's crazy. I mean, it's just like there's literally no liquidity on a lot of those names. Neo. So let's go back to Litecoin. We looked at Litecoin here. There's a trend that I'm watching here. You can call it this one here. It just looks like a little bit of a bear flag, to be honest. Doesn't look very bullish in the big picture on the dollar chart. The halving is past. There's probably not a lot of bullish catalyst for it at this point, other than just seeing if the chart can find a low, but not a whole lot there. What were some of the other ones? Oh, EOS. EOS is another one that I was looking at for potential breakouts. Just has never materialized yet. If you go to the 4-hour chart, this was sitting real tight. Had a really weird pattern. You got that BART kind of phenomenon going on here, where you had the quick spike, and then it just sat tight, and then the quick drop, right? And then just they're sitting tight, and then it tried to go, but now it's kind of rolling over here. I was looking at this here as a potential breakout area, but rolling down here. Yeah, the VPN thing, it is cheap, and you can say the same for Bitfinex. You can say the same for some of these other ones. But the challenge is, if you want to take advantage of, some of the new tools that they're rolling out, if you want to do margin, if you want to do stuff like that, you got to have your account verified. And just using a VPN is not going to solve that problem. And so I do think it's going to impact some people, right? And there's always the risk of, they find out you're not you're US, and they'll close your account down and you'll lose your coin. So there's always that. So, you can use it with the VPN, but I mean, would it be my primary exchange at that point? No way, right? I mean, that's just me. Yeah, so on the BTC halving, that's what I was talking about here at the start, is I do think the halving price action will be similar, where you get a run up, and we're seeing some run up already. I think this is a lot to do with it. If you look at the year, this has been a huge move. And coming into 2019, right, Litecoin halving was a lot of talk. Bitcoin halving started hitting the radar, and so it's not like it's a secret. Everyone's talking about it. It's on major outlets. The huge influencers are talking about it. And so there's certainly run up into that. And much like the Litecoin halving, I do expect you'll see some pullback well before the actual event takes place, some profit taking, as is generally the case. But that being said, Bitcoin is a little bit of a different animal, right? You look at the market cap and you look at the dominance and all that, it's going to react a little bit differently, right? Litecoin, you can see a lot more speculative traders buying it, selling into the move, and then just calling it done and moving on. Bitcoin's a little bit different in the sense that people will accumulate it and hold it for a lot longer than they will some of these other altcoins. Cardano, close your eyes, everyone. Yikes. Quantum, not looking too hot here. Keep an eye on this little, looks like a bear pennant. See which way it breaks, but not looking too good there. Tron got a good smack in earlier today. Tron, all right. So One Harmony still rocking here. Nice little bit of a trade. This one's a little bit wider and loose. The Coinbase listing news has put it in play, so there's definitely some trade opportunities to be had. That one's just a little bit more, choppy. Jack in the house. What was the other one? Obviously we covered Matic here at the beginning. Matic, had a move. I think that was the move already, but if we zoom out to the daily chart, you can do similar action here on the price action with the retracement levels. You can see it's about 50% right now since this downtrend. From a horizontal price perspective, the 618 lines up very well with this prior support level that gave way. And so, you know, maybe you get another push into this zone before you get a bigger pullback on Matic. But I'm out of that one already. We talked Algo. I'm going to cycle through some of the Coinbase names, as we can call it. Algo had a pretty good pump. You know, might still go. It's right at the 10 EMA on the daily, but the 10 EMA is still bearishly inverted to the 22. And that's just because it's coming off of the back of this very long downtrend. He had a very nice push. And, you know, looked like it was about to get going yesterday, as we saw here, hit the retracement level, pulling right back. So we'll see where this one goes here. Needs to hold that low, that swing low of 0.068. Some of the other names that were on the list yesterday, Dash, saw a little bit of a bounce on that, not a whole lot. Decred had a pretty good reaction to the news. If you go to Decred BTC, you know, Decred had a pretty good spike off that. You know, up about 15% pretty quickly, kind of giving most of that up now. A lot of those, you know, you get that reaction and it's kind of like, okay, is that really enough to you know, to create a sustained rally? In some names it is because they're already strong, but in other names it's just kind of the flash in the pan spike. What were some of the other names? We talked ONT, we already looked at that. I think that was all of them, right? Okay. We did look at Link. I'll cycle back to that one. Let me do a couple more of these others real quick here. Oh, Icon. Brutal. And that's the USD side. Look at it from the BTC pair. So many of these names are just brutal. Wanchain, remember Wanchain? There's a name from yesteryear. Should we go down the list? Should we go down the sob list? People are going to go down memory lane. Oh, I still own 1 million tokens of that. There's Zill. Yikes. And the list goes on, my friends. Maker Die. You know, this one's tough. I don't trade this one. You're heavy in Wanchain. Stop it. Oh, Populous. Oh, okay. You could really want to torture yourselves. Populous. Eesh. Look at this. It's tough. Tough out there. Let's go to the coin market cap real quick. Let me see here. Monero, Tron, we covered most of this here. Link, Neo, IOTA. We haven't looked at IOTA. Atom. We'll take a look at that guy. Aunt. Monaco was moving here. Yep. IOTA. I'm going to just start cycling through some of these here pretty quickly. Man. Yeah, and a lot of these, I was looking at them as potential reversal trades, but, you know, until they cleared some resistance, I didn't want to do a whole lot with them. In fact, you can see here, I still got an alert set at that point, but just no follow through on any of these. 10x, oh my goodness, there's a name from yesteryear. The token cards. I don't even want to know what the market cap on these guys is. It's not crypto.com's market cap, I'll tell you that. Even this one's rolling over. Yep. Just thinking about those 2017 valuations. Some of these names were worth $30 billion. And, you know, I remember the $1 billion club had like 20 some names in it at one point. It's crazy. Would you sell Litecoin now or hodl it? Oh man, if I hadn't already sold, would I sell it now? That's a tough one. Let me go look at the Litecoin chart here. Here's Raven, Engine. I'm going through some of the big movers from this year that have fully retraced. Okay, I'm done torturing you guys. Let's go to Litecoin. This one's tough. Obviously, it just depends where you got it, right? I mean, if you wrote it from 25 to 92, you're probably still doing just fine. Would you have loved to sell at 140? Of course. But it's bounced back. It's kind of choppy, middle ground here. I'd be looking at two levels, on a move above that closes above that 101 level would be good. You had a wick attempt here. If I was still in it and holding it, on a daily basis, if it lost, I don't know, say $89 or so, 88 in that range, me personally, I'd probably say I'm out of it. But again, it depends on a trade. It depends on how long you've been holding it. If you bought it here, if it's a long-term hold, you got it here at the lows, like who cares, right? So it just really depends. But it's just choppy and range bound. So I'd really be looking at support resistance levels. What tends to happen, especially on these lows, if it breaks this low, there's a good chance that it's going to at least test, down here, this wick. Do you want to be in it for that test, right? That's the question. If you get out of the way, you can always look to see if it holds and maybe get back in. Obviously, you want it to break higher, but it's in the middle. It's in the middle ground. It's chop zone. There's really no way to say at this point. Litecoin BTC, there's no love there. Litecoin BTC is breaking the prior lows. It's just been trending lower. Once it had this failed breakout after the halving, and that was really it, right? It was setting up going into the halving here, but once it had that pop and drop, and it failed to hold the line, like that's it. It's just losing support. Arc. Man, oh man, do you guys still follow this project? Arc. I haven't read up on it lately in terms of some of the things they were trying to do. I wonder how far along they've come. Lisk. Stratus. Eesh. What's suppressing XRP? I covered that a little bit here at the start. And you have a lot of fundamental catalysts that are headwinds for XRP. Obviously the supply issue. You have tons of supply. You have Ripple Labs that has been selling a lot of that supply in Q1 and Q2. They're saying that's going to change now, but you still have a lot of the founders controlling that. You have new platforms. You have Libra and Fed now and JP Morgan coin and all these other things that are basically competing with what they were trying to do. So fundamentally it's not there, right? It's got a lot of headwinds, and you're getting some people just saying forget it, sell it. Chinese rated ARK in the top 41. Interesting. Raven. Yeah, I think we looked at Raven. Well, we didn't look at it. I just briefly glanced right through it. But, I mean, this one has had a full retrace. You get these little retracement bounces along the way up, but they just make new lows. And, I mean, you're pretty much back down to the, the all-time lows down here, right? So you're basically there. And so it's crazy. And does it stop there? No, it doesn't have to. We just saw a whole bunch of other charts where they are still making new all-time lows versus BTC. Would you sell the alts and move into Bitcoin or hold? Oh, that's a tough question. I get that a lot. And that was a big discussion even last year when we started seeing the selling pressure in the alts. And, my answer has always been, there is no alt that I will just blindly hold, forever, right? Bitcoin's probably the only crypto where I will say, let's just hold it. Like if you force me to buy any crypto and hold it for 10 years, I can't think of any alts where I would be like, I'll do that one. Maybe ETH, maybe, right? But Bitcoin's probably the only crypto. And so for me, at some point, you have to decide where you just decide to cut it loose. And it's hard now because these are down here at the lows, and you could get one of these out of nowhere spikes where you get a sudden 30, 40, 50, 60% run, right? Remember, ETH did that 40% move, in 3 days. And the fear is always, I'm going to sell my alt, and as soon as I do, it's going to do that, right? And so you just have to decide usually in advance, right? Like either write it off and say, I'm just going to take the loss for what it is and just hold it, whatever, it's gone. Or you just decide to cut it loose, and if it pops after you cut it loose, then it is what it is, right? Like you have to have a stop loss point. Even on long-term holds, you got to have a stop loss point. Even, obviously it's got to be way wider than if you're trading, but you got to have a stop loss point, even on the alts. Alts always go down when you sell them. Absolutely they do. No kidding, man. What's BitTorrent doing here? A little bit of a rollover. All right, anything in the green today here that's not like a token exchange here? Tezos are still living off of the Coinbase pump. Lisk, Roar, another exchange token. And then we'll get into small cap land. Into blah. Tezos still looking pretty good here. Big wick there though, not sure about that. All right, let's go back to Bitcoin, take a look at that again, and then we'll wrap this one up. This is looking pretty good here versus BTC. Looking like it might be setting up for another leg higher if it can break out right here. Pretty clear range right there. And, here's your support there. Those last two wicks held the breakout point, so see if it holds. All right, so back to Bitcoin. We had this sell-off. We were having a little bit of a bounce right now. Major resistance now is going to basically be this support that gave way. And so 11.6 up to around 11.7, that little zone. That's your first kind of major test here. On the way down, kind of in middle zone, right? You had this very quick move here, and price is just right in the middle between that. So if you go to the higher time frames here, look at the 4-hour or the daily chart, this breakout point back here, right around 11K, give or take, would be kind of the first major support that you want to see it hold on the way down. We looked at some fib retracement levels. This wick hit right at the 382. 50% puts you just below that around 10.8, and then 618's back here some. So at this point, we need to see a higher low formed on that daily chart. This could be it, but the 10 EMA is still down here just below 11,000. So even a pullback down to this zone here would basically be just a pullback to the moving averages, and could still set up for another leg higher. It would also be a pullback to the breakout point on this double bottom, and so that'd be a nice place for some supports to start showing up. A nice place to look at maybe some secondary entries for a brighter, broader move up on the way up if it continues. So those are my thoughts on the BTC here. We are still very early on in this weekly chart here, but what I was pointing out in my last video is if it can close above that 11.5 on the weekly chart, that would be a breakout on the closing basis. That'd be very positive, especially the fact that it came right back to the 10 EMA on the weekly and started bouncing off that. However, I did mention that volume has been pretty light on that move up on the weekly chart. Not tremendous. It could just kind of grind higher, but would have been really nice to see some big volume coming in off of that reversal there. That would have made it for a much more convincing, place to look for adding. So I'd be watching that. So those are the levels to be watching on the Bitcoin side. If it loses the lows at 9K, do we want to talk about that? No, we don't want to talk about that. We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, and address the support resistance levels from there. Okay, my friends, that's going to do it for today. As always, check out nodeinvestor.com for the video courses, Node Insiders for the alerts and some of the other fun stuff, and to get access to the Slack group. So thanks for being here. As always, it's always a pleasure. See you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.